Welcome to the very first episode of qmates podcast. I'm Andrea Felicetti, growth hacker and digital manager of qmates, and in this show we talk to the minds behind some of the most ambitious and resilient companies we've had the chance to work with. Today's guest is someone who perfectly represents what it means to lead a scale-up in today's chaotic, fast-moving world. Georg, CEO of sureVIVE. He's built more than just a product. He's built a company and a culture that know how to stay focused under pressure, make hard decisions with clarity, and grow even when the terrain becomes unpredictable. We worked closely with Georg and his team at qmates, and what stood out from day one is this. They don't just react to technical problems, they see them as an opportunities to grow stronger as an organization. Let's get into it.
Hey,
Nice to meet you. You can
pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a bit about your company stories and how it was founded?
Yeah, sure. So the company sureVIVE has been founded 3 years ago. Interesting aspect is perhaps that the product is used in various places in Switzerland since 10 years. So actually what we did back then was, and I'm going to get to the history behind it in a sec, we actually took the product Momentum that was well known all over Switzerland for alerting first responders in various cantons. We said that this product, so as sureVIVE, right, that this product is one that we want to develop. It was used for alerting volunteer rescuers all over Switzerland, and we said that product is one that we want to further develop toward being used by professional rescue services all over Switzerland. And that's also talking about myself there, how I came into play, because I was in the past working for Swiss Air Rescue Rega, which was one of the I would say one of the customers of the software Momentum. So we've been taking the software, developing such that it can be used by mountain rescuers all over Switzerland. Maybe we get to the point that we're talking about around 2,500-3,000 people that are alerted there. And back then we said, this product has potential, this company has potential, the people behind the product have potential, which is why sureVIVE was basically founded with the intention of taking Momentum, taking the people behind Momentum and bringing it to the next level for the sake of rescue operations in Switzerland. In a nutshell, we put it like this.
What have been the main challenges you faced in growing your business so far?
I would say that scaling a business is never easy. So there are, when you really want to sustainably scale a business, there are a lot of potential pitfalls along the way and a lot of obstacles that need to be overcome. At the end of the day, right at the very beginning, we established some basic principles that are relevant for us. So we called them like company guidelines in a sense, right? Guiding principles, that was the term. One of them was, and talking about, how we scaled the business. One of them was that we want to do best-in-class operations. What does that mean? Perhaps it sounds a bit boring even, right? So the thing is, since we are alerting volunteer rescuers, professional rescuers for avalanche missions, when someone has a cardiac arrest, we are alerting those people. When more people have been injured in a car accident or whatever, we are alerting the people that are organizing ambulances and air transport on site, right? Which means that the underlying systems need to be very reliant, very resilient, and need to function all the time, basically. So we said one of the first steps is we need to establish stable operations. We're investing quite a lot as a company. We're working with external partners to deliver best-in-class support. So this was the guiding principle. To deliver swift support, to make sure that also, which is another topic, right, that we have a tight quality control over the product. And that was step one, right? Establish guiding principles based on along which we can grow. And then afterwards, it was all about, I would say, identifying roles and responsibilities, segregating duties, being able to focus people on their work. And now, 3 years further down the line, I need to say, finally, we made the step, in my opinion, of establishing an organization that is empowering the people in it, like, let's say, to have smaller teams that can grow along what we need to do. And that is, like, not only providing best-in-class support, but also developing the product in a way across different value streams, different segments, right?
Yes.
Based on certain standards. So getting back to the question of what were the main challenges, providing guardrails, identifying roles and responsibilities, sustainably growing the company along it, all the while ensuring that day-to-day operations are functioning efficiently and effectively. Again, like succinctly summarized.
Was there a moment when you realized you needed to make significant changes of your structure or the way you work?
Yeah, definitely, right? So I would say right from the very outset, like at the beginning, this was moving into a company, having a product, having people. You need to, I can say that as an executive perhaps, but also as a whole, I would say. It's very relevant that you really understand what you want to do as a company and who has which capabilities. You need to put everyone like correctly on the playing field, let's say. And that was like the first point where I said, okay, we need to change how we operate, right? So this was the first step, and afterwards I was referring to the scaling. So we started, maybe to give you an example about something that is non-technical that might also be interesting, like our marketing department. We started with two individuals there in the marketing department that were, we just started to understand what we can say where in which manner. Now we are three. We didn't grow that much from that respect, but we are communicating much more broadly. And the scaling there is that I was at the beginning very much involved into that. Now I'm not that much involved because we have just last year we had someone that became head of marketing internally, and for me this is always a sign that I can pull out of topics as a CEO. There is someone that takes charge of that, talking about the guardrails there, and it works, right? And to get back to your question, at the beginning there was such a step, and also last year we had a step where we said now we need to scale, right? So the organization needs to scale, and also from a technological perspective, which is also relevant to say, we have been thinking about how we can define the architecture of the product such that we can develop in parallel, that we can ensure quality, and that we can also scale as with regards to the user base that is behind the product in the end.
Really interesting. In general, what do you think are the most important factors for a company that wants to scale sustainably?
It's a good and a hard question.
Yeah.
I can only talk based on my own experience, I would say. So how to answer in an efficient way, so I really think that there are a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations, consulting organizations out there which are telling you, if you want to be successful as a company, do this, 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 and this, right? I think, yes, obviously there are like, let's say, best practices that one can employ. However, I think that every company needs to understand itself well, needs to understand where they want to arrive at, and then make the right steps. I think that talking about the software industry, which I can say, right, it's important that one understands the own organization, so the organizational structure and also the process organization where you want to go to, identify gaps that you have, and then iteratively, adapt along the way based on data. That's also very relevant, I think, like data-driven management. Sounds like a kind of bullshit bingo, right?
Yes.
But I don't think it is, because you can also measure very simple data in a very simple fashion in a company, right? That is might even not be fully correct. This is not relevant, but then you have something that you can measure what you do as an organization against. And I think the point is simply, if you want to scale sustainably, then the best is to understand your own operations by yourself. You can use consulting agencies. They help, because very often we're like biased, and we are, you don't see the big picture when you're inside of an operation of a business. So get external input to help you, but make your own thoughts about that, and then work with the organization, with the people, establish processes, measure the outcome of these processes, and step by step adapt to what you do internally and adapt what the market is telling you. So inspect and adapt, right? Everyone that is doing agile likes to say that. I also like to say that. I think that's the name of the game, right? And measure.
Wow.
To inspect, you need to measure. That's it. And to adapt, you need to be open-minded, which is also very relevant. Yeah.
I think it's very hard.
Thank you. Yeah, it
Yes,
is.
it is.
I agree. I agree.
And what's your personal approach to leadership and managing change in your organization?
Okay, that's also, like I saw the questions up front. So very, very, how to say, very multifaceted topic, that thing, right? So personally, when it comes to my leadership style, which is also not easy to assess for an individual, however, I would say that I try to have, as much as I can, a participative leadership style, in the sense that I consider my role as CEO, as I said before, to provide a frame within which people can steer the business and grow themselves, and grow the business while growing themselves, like this aspect of empowering. There are situations in which I am basically here for saying, here there is a gap, I need to manage that, I need to help, right? I might need to take decisions. That's one thing. And the other thing is, which is very relevant for us as well, in our, let's say, segment, industry, public safety, when there is let's say an incident that occurs, so where there is when there is a situation where we are together with the rescue organization, we very quickly need to adapt. We need to, let's say, do a deployment. We have an incident. We want to make sure that a larger scale rescue operation is supported well. It requires decisive action. Moving back to your question, situational leadership style, normally participative leadership. I try to empower the people, whereas when when the shit hits the fan, so, like, pardon my French, right?
Yeah.
So then it's all about taking decisive steps to organize everyone. So there it's more like, centered to me or to an incident manager that says, this is how we do it, and you do that, you do this, you do that, and then we move back to normal mode. By the way, this is a lot how rescue organizations themselves function. We emulate that. Since you also have people from rescue organizations inside of the company, you have that in their DNA at the end of the day.
Looking ahead, what are your company's ambitions on a national or international level?
So as a company, we're quite focused on Switzerland, because we've been basically founded with the intention of, I would say, speeding up digital transformation of rescue operations in Switzerland across different groups of rescuers. And our ambitions nationally are, we are internally saying that we have two main strategic goals, and one of them is that we want to tear down boundaries to save lives. This is how we're putting it. And what does that mean? So our software is structured such that we can enable, which is the reality out there, I'm going to give you an example, that we can enable different groups of rescuers to very easily collaborate with each other. So for instance, if there is an avalanche, then you're in a situation where it's highly time critical. I'm going to elaborate a bit. Avalanche goes down, you might not even know whether someone is buried underneath the snow or not. However, when you have, like, let's say, when you have the suspicion that someone is buried in the snow, because you might see some ski trails going in there or some tracks going in there, but not moving out of the avalanche cone, then okay, something might be fishy there, right? So what happens normally is that in such a situation, some emergency organization is alerted, and then you have a few minutes to act. That's really the thing. So, and then, like, very succinctly said, you need to send a helicopter to pick up the person, to bring to the avalanche cone before they're checking out whether there is some danger on site. Another avalanche might be going down or whatever. At the same time, you need to bring in avalanche dog handlers with another helicopter not from a public safety organization, but from a private organization, perhaps even, right? So you need to tell the private organization helicopter where to pick up the avalanche dog handlers and fly them to the avalanche cone. a lot of coordination in 10-15 minutes, really a lot of coordination. And in the past, that was a lot about telephoning around. You sent pager messages to the people. They needed to phone in. The dispatchers told us, avalanche, like 10-15 minutes, you're going to be swamped in calls, needing to telephone around. Nowadays, it's in one application since actually 2 years, I think, give and take, right? Where the different groups of rescuers are inside. And additionally, speaking of, what our intentions are also, we are not having as a company the idea that we are going to build everything ourselves, So we are trying to identify complementary software to offer best of breed solutions to rescue organizations. So whenever we create a mission, there is like an external messaging system, app-based messaging that is triggered, where you have all people in a chat, so they can organize themselves. And our intention as a company is to expand this model, because it's not only avalanche situations. You have larger scale events that might be across continental boundaries, that might involve different rescue organizations. And we want to make sure, and we are actually working on a larger project there at the moment, that all rescue organizations can exchange data between them, have the same situational awareness view, be it on the spot, on the avalanche cone, in the dispatch center, in between somewhere, right? And that very flexibly, even a person in a ski resort, a ski patroller can say, I've identified an emergency situation, I'm pressing a button and I call a helicopter directly that I see afterwards, or I call an ambulance to that end, right? And that's our intention. So really, I guess, to summarize it, it's tearing down boundaries to save lives. This is what we want to do, and we want to use technology for that purpose. And we are doing that very actively, and also trying to find novel ways how this can be managed, talking about innovation.
How has qmates intervention impact your ability to scale your product or service?
I mentioned this project before, this larger project that we're working on, which is, I would say, related to the simple, scalable exchange of data between different rescue organizations. And we have worked with qmates even before that project. And back then we have said, like during the ramp-up phase of the project, we said, we need additional support there, in the sense of, again, I mean, as said before, scaling, growing also means that you identify, let's say, not only on an organizational, but also on a technical level, steps that make you sustainably grow. On a technical level, have the right architecture. On an organizational level, to have the team supported by professionals that know how to scale an agile development team, a Scrum team in our case, right? And we knew qmates. We said we want to do that with qmates. We very early on explained the entire thing, right, and said we will bring you guys in. We anyway are already, we need to have a scaled Scrum in our company, so we are also going to scale the development team there, right? And qmates helped us to first of all understand how we can scale, based on which grounds we can scale, also how to measure how we scale, the effectiveness and the efficiency of that. And afterwards, also actually right at this very moment, qmates is helping us to make the right choices about a sustainable target architecture for our software.
What were the main challenges you faced before working with qmates, and how did you solve them together?
The main challenges were actually the ones that I mentioned before. So it's how can we scale? So we knew that we wanted to hire more individuals that help us to develop the software, because there was this demand is simply there. And obviously you might imagine that if you're dealing with emergency medical services with different rescue organizations across Switzerland, you also continuously need to evolve the product based on feedback, right? So we said, okay, we want to scale organizationally. There we said, okay, qmates should help us there. We started with a team that was give and take a single Scrum team. Nowadays we are working in 3 teams in a scaled Scrum setting. qmates definitely being a very helpful factor along the way to understand how we can best do that. It's one thing, and the other thing is there was again, moving back to the beginning, like this entire aspect about quality management that we have in the team, best practices that we work according to, trying to distribute roles within the Scrum team. A few years later on, so 2 years perhaps, right, I can say that we have established for the larger team, with the help of qmates, a better understanding of what roles in an agile team do, what the guardrails should be to the team, and how we can also enable our team to constantly improve along the way. And also, of course, this also being linked to which architecture choices we make. Because as one rule is saying, right, the organization follows a bit how the software is structured, or vice versa, right, how you want to put that.
Right. Have you noticed any changes in how your team tackles technical challenges after working with their specialists?
Yeah, definitely in a more holistic way, in the sense that we started with a very dev-focused approach, and not taking into account how what to do in operations according to best practices, perhaps also how to ensure that know-how is systematically transferred in the team. To give you another example, right? So qmates very strongly push the notion of pair programming in our teams, which helped us. So I would say that qmates helped the team to really look at problems from a broader perspective. So not only development but operations, and also to from a methodology perspective, to make sure that we work according to best practice. We transfer know-how inside of the team, right? We understand if we have some gap somewhere, what to do in order to ensure that this gap does not occur in the future, etc.
This is the last question. What advice would you give to other CEOs considering involving qmates in their growth journey?
So I'd be saying, think of, especially software CEOs, right? That's my position there. Think of whether the product that you have today is still going to work in the same way in 5 years from now. Let's take 5 years, right? In the sense that it still fits to the market, and that also the technical basis of the product and how your team is working on the product is one that can work in 5 years from now. And if the answer to either of those questions is I am not sure or I need help, then ask qmates about some help there, because they have I would say, a solid vision of what it takes to excel on a even more and more competitive software landscape in Europe and in Switzerland in particular as well.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georg. If there's one thing I take away from this conversation, it's this: scaling fast doesn't have to mean scaling messy. Even when complexity rises, it's possible to stay grounded. If you invest in structure, build a strong technical culture, and align your product, architecture, and organization. To all the CEO listening, if your teams are growing and your product is evolving, but complexity is slowing you down, this might be the right moment to stop and ask, are we really scaling in a way that's sustainable? Are our tech product and people still in sync? That's the kind of work we care about at qmates. Not just fixing code, but helping your company evolve into a system that can grow without burning out your team or breaking your product. You can learn more at qmates.tech or check out our latest frameworks and insights from the field. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.